Thank you. Okay. First of all, thank you all so much for being here, for showing up for Nicole's screening. I think we should just get into it, right? How many minutes do we have? Because I know we can talk for a long time.
We have like half an hour.
Okay, half an hour. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple questions that I want to start with first. I think for me, I know you personally. I'm sure some people do as well. But you started off as a writer. Why directing and how?
I think I've always wanted to direct, but it's been this like inner part of me that I've not said out loud. I almost felt like I didn't have the license to direct. I didn't go to film school for it, so I just always felt like it wasn't for me. But I'm somebody who, you know, even if I'm afraid, I do it anyway. And so with this story, it just felt so personal, and it just felt like I didn't want to give it to anyone else to translate the vision. And I said to my business partner, I think I want to direct it. And he said, go for it. Amazing. I was like, okay.
How did the story come about?
So the story came about from a panel, actually. I was on a panel, I think it was at Gather, which is an all-woman, you know, beautiful concept store in Lagos. So there was this panel where she doesn't even know this, Mena Mashika was speaking, and she was talking about how, you know, a lot of the stories that we see don't really represent women, and that she hears so many phenomenal stories. And she heard about this woman who lost her husband and she became a bus driver. And, you know, she didn't go into detail, and she just continued. But the next morning I woke up and I literally just was thinking of what she said, and I was thinking of that woman. And yeah, it was January. I was going through, you know, a tough time and like heartbreak. And I feel like heartbreak makes me really creative. Not that I'm inviting heartbreak in my life, but I feel like when I'm heartbroken, I'm just way more open and way more raw. And I just wrote the film. I wrote it in a day.
Wow.
I wrote it in bed.
Wow.
I wrote it on my notes. I didn't write it in final draft. I didn't write it in, you know, all of the things they tell you to write in. And yeah, I wrote it in one day. The next day I sent it to Wini, because when I wrote it, I just had her in my mind. Yeah, she read it and she said yes, and here we are.
That's actually what I was going to go to next. Like the relationship between like a director and an actor is one that is so special and like unique, and you need like a synergy almost before you start shooting, because that's what translates like on screen. I want to ask Wini, like how is it for you like portraying this character, but most importantly like trusting Nicole to bring out like the talent, because ultimately that's what a director does.
So when I met Nicole, I was almost immediately inspired by her journey. And just throughout our friendship in general, she continues to inspire me because, like she said, and she feels the fear and does it anyways. Nicole is the type of person that she would always say yes. She knows when to say no, but she's a yes person. She would say yes, she might not have the idea, but she'll figure it out. And I just trusted that Nicole would not do anything that would be bad. And so I was fine with associating myself with that. Yeah.
And I mean, this is not your first film, obviously, because if you haven't seen My Father's Shadow, like this beautiful actress here plays our lead. She plays the mother of the boys. But I've seen also just working with you and knowing you, how you carry so much emotion, you know, and you tell it with your eyes. I want to know, like, what's the process for you in becoming the character? Like, do you spend weeks crying just so that you can cry on screen? Like, what's that process like for you?
Honestly, I think that part comes naturally. The vulnerability, the allowing people just come into, maybe not my personal, but when it comes to stage, acting, film, I think that part comes naturally because vulnerability for me is easier than it is for other people. Doing comedy might be a little bit harder, right? Because that one doesn't come easy. But in terms of process, for me, I do a lot of backstory to try and understand the character, to know who she is, what she likes, what she wears, what she doesn't wear, what she eats, what she doesn't eat, the books she reads, things like that. Just going being very, very specific about the character. I think that's the process that I take. Yeah.
And I actually want to move to Kaliné now, like, because the music, when I was watching it, I kept saying, man, like, this music is great, because obviously as a producer myself, like, one of the things that I'm so big on, and I actually spent some time doing, was just like music supervising and just understanding like music for film. And I always say that music has a way to just capture the pulse of the moment, but also like the pulse of like the location and the time that we are in. What was it like for you in translating? Because I heard some jazz sounds. I was like, this girl's brilliant. So what was it like for you to infuse that into some moments that may not be typically, akin to that kind of sound? Yeah.
Yes, great question. First of all, what you said about a director and an actor's relationship, right? And how close that special bond that they form. People might not know, it's very similar with, director composer, because in that post-production moment, you're really trying to figure out, okay, the sonic identity of this film. And the two themes that I think I would sort of put this film in is juxtaposition. So that was a very important thing that we wanted to, Simi is in this place in her life, in this season in her life, but she's going into this space that is not common for a female to go into. So there's that juxtaposition. And then also quietness or silence. How do you score silence in a way that is still quiet without it being
deadpan?
So those are the two things. And right, as you rightfully said, right, jazz, that first jazz piece, when she was in the bus park and she finally had been accepted to drive, and then she like turns the ignition on, and that's the first thing you hear. And me and Nicole like sort of like went through various things, and we were like, yes, it has to talk, like that piece has to talk about how random that whole scene was. The fact that she's her and she's in this bus and she's in this bus park trying to figure it out. So those were the decisions that I had to make to now translate that into the music.
Amazing. Yeah. Nicole, like, one of the most powerful scenes for me was like, I think in the first couple minutes of watching the film, and it was very subtle, but it seemed intentional. So I want to ask about it. It was when she came back home and she had the shirt and she washed off the blood. I was like, why? Because, and it was so subtle, but it was such a powerful thing for me, because it felt like, I knew obviously it's not about the shirt, like obviously, but what was this attachment that you were trying to portray with her and her husband, that she felt to care for him even in death, So anyways, yeah.
I think that's what it is. She cares for him. Yeah. That was her role. Yeah. That was what she did. That's how she loved him. That was her love language. Yeah. And so to wash his clothes, that was symbolic of just the fact that it's like they say grief is when you have love that has nowhere else to go. So how do you continue to love him? You're going to keep washing his clothes. You're going to keep trying to get the stain out. And ultimately she couldn't. And I think that's what grief is about. It's just like acceptance. So even that idea that God knows best isn't like you understand why he knows best. It doesn't really answer the question of the why. Why do we lose the people that we love? But it's just ultimately like a surrender and an acceptance. Like he must know best. Yeah.
And to Wini, like, you were thrown into this situation where, like, not only were you fluent in Yoruba, like, come on, but also like you had to almost portray a certain like roughness as well, and that's not something that I would say that a lot of, actors maybe necessarily have range to be able to do. Where did you have to go to pull that out? What experiences did you have to pull from?
First of all, I grew up in Mushin.
Okay.
For those who don't know.
Go figure.
I think the first 6 or 7 years of my life was in Mushin. even though I was very protected, I lived in that area. And
So
there's
familiar with it.
yes, there's no way your environment doesn't in some way influence you. But aside from that, I remember me and Nicole going to Ikorodu.
So I'm going to tell you another story. So I was struggling with a script I was writing, and it was about a house girl in Nigeria. And I was just struggling because I couldn't relate to the character. And Winnie was like, I feel like have you been to Face Me, I Face You, which is a small, very one contained room apartment that people live in. That's you face each other, you face me, I face you. And she was like, have you ever been to Face Me, I Face You? And I was like, no. She was like, well, you need to go to one. Like, let me take you to Ikorodu. I was like, what do you know about Ikorodu? And she was like, trust me, I know.
I grew up in Ikorodu.
And so we take a day trip. She wanted to immerse me. She wanted me to sleep there. I was like, let's chill. Let's do a day trip, okay? And so we do a day trip. And then as we're on the road, these last minute officers stop us and they're like trying to harass my driver. And the guys are being a bit rough. And Winnie winds down the window and she's like... Taylor, she said something in Yoruba. I'm not gonna try.
I think.
And I was shocked. I was like, "This
She
girl,
hasn't seen that side of me.
She changed it up, and that for me was why I knew she could play the character."
Also, this. Okay, so looking the way I look, which is a little bit lighter. My hair has a little curl to it. Whenever you approach people in public, they immediately assume that you are the softest ajebota, and they try to cheat you or whatever it is that they do to people like that. And as soon as I switch and I start speaking Yoruba, there's a level of respect. There's a level of, oh, you're part of us.
Yeah, you're one of us.
Yes, we belong. And so I've had to do that for so long, which is, the switch that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And to Kaliné, like some of the other sounds that you were pulling into the film, I know we were speaking a little bit about the jazz, but like for some of the other sounds, like what were the references that you were looking at in terms of just like how you wanted to convey the emotion of the scene?
So for the process for a composer, you have a spotting session with a director, and then you do like a temp score, which is a temporary score, and you sort of like bring, based on the conversations you've had with the director, you bring in various things into the temp score, and that's when you now decide, okay, this is the sound that we want for this scene. This is what we're going for. So with Nicole as well, we had a playlist, we're listening to songs, the various cues together, and there was like there were a few things that we said, okay, for this particular mood, we're doing like more classical Western, then for this it's like more of the jazz, and then of course we have the Afro soul and the Afrobeat elements. So in terms of where I went like with the sounds, it was mostly to do with the conversations that we had and what we were listening to, and just how to translate that in a way that the scene could be carried with it, basically.
I mean, you are an accomplished musician yourself, like a phenomenal one, by the way.
Thank you.
And I'm just curious to know for you, like being a musician, you would think, oh yeah, it makes sense to kind of transition to film, but scoring for film is a very specific sort of craft.
Yes.
It's not like just like getting behind the mic and singing. You know what I mean? Not to downplay that either at all. Like, both are quite specific, but I know that scoring for film is really specific. So what was it for you, and why did you decide, okay, I'm going to like expand into like scoring for film?
So no, I guess most people don't know that my major in Berklee College of Music was film scoring.
Oh, wow.
So I started there.
Okay.
So even though I had piano and voice and violin growing up, when I got to Berklee, that was the thing that just really stuck out to me. And it's almost as if I got to intro to film scoring, I'll never forget it, and all the pieces just came together. But then, of course, as God's timing and everything, environment, as you said, I was in New York for a bit, then I moved back to Nigeria, and there was no films at the time that needed a composer, that had the budget for composers, that even felt that it should be something that they should consider. But I used to sort of send cues to different directors, and then I started doing songs for films, just trying to get my foot in there. So it wasn't until I don't know if anyone knows Breath of Life. that I got my first break. Shout out to Eku. That I got my first break, and then since then, started diving more into film. And then me and Nicole have been friends for a long time. And yeah, the minute that she said, as Wini said, the minute Nicole called me, I was like,
sure,
whatever needs to happen, let's go. So,
and to Nicole, it's your first show as a director, and you've taught me how to say yes to a lot of things, because I've seen your career just take shape with such authenticity, but also at every point in time, you're not afraid to evolve yourself. So what else are you evolving into that we should look forward to?
Well, I want to direct a feature for
Amazing.
sure. So I just wrote a film called Tennis Lessons.
Okay.
So I'm going to direct that, but I also want to direct for hire. I just feel like it would be cool to direct a story that isn't mine, just for experience. So, hey.
Nicole, the director, guys.
Yeah.
And for this specific film itself, what are you hoping where are you hoping that it goes and travels to? Because people at home haven't seen it.
Yeah, so honestly, with this film, it was created first.
Okay.
There was no plan behind it. Gotcha. It was let's make this film. And then I saw that Screen Nigeria had programming, and I DM'd Baba. It was very organic. I just said, hey, I have a film. we hadn't even shot it when I messaged him, But so I think that I want the film to go where it's supposed to go. I want the message to travel to where it's supposed to travel to. I want the people who are supposed to be healed from the message to get the message. So I don't want to overly network, overly position myself. I actually just want the film to do what it is supposed to do.
Yeah. And speaking about the message, is something that I got from the film, and I'm sure most people did as well, but it reminded me of a quote that Ryan Coogler just said recently during the Sinners press tour, and he was saying how put yourself in uncomfortable positions until you're comfortable. And I feel obviously for me, I instantly got that because My Father's Shadow is my first feature, and thanks. But it's been an uncomfortable process. The entire thing has been uncomfortable. You've put yourself in an uncomfortable process by directing something and just saying, I'm going to do this, And I wanted to know for you, obviously it was based off of Mena's story, or Mena sharing the story about a female, but what does that mean specifically for women putting themselves in uncomfortable positions?
Wow, that's such a good... So... Yes, it was based off of Mena's story, but I have a very close friend of mine, L.A. Atawadi, who lost her husband 2 years ago. And she has 2 boys, and she just defied everything that I've seen or heard about a widow. And she just continued, and she fought through it, and she's still doing it. And every single day she's working, and she's providing, and she's living, and she's still fabulous, and she's still living her life. And so for me, I was really inspired by that grit and that resilience that you don't even know you have. You don't know how strong you are until something is on your shoulders. Absolutely. Right? And so I think that's what happens with women all the time. And a lot of the times, I listen to people that talk about, gender representation and things like that, and more nuanced characters in films, because it is so true. What we see influences how we are. Absolutely. But all of the women that I see in my everyday life are super strong. Yeah. My mother is very strong. LA is very strong. There's so many women around me that are blueprints for people that can show up and carry families and carry nations and all these kind of things. So I think... Can't remember the question, but yeah, that's...
No, it was about putting...
I don't spoke too much, I just, sorry, I lost
women being in uncomfortable positions. Yeah. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, yeah. I think I answered it. So I think uncomfortable positions are important. Yes. And I think anytime you shy away from that, your comfort zone is where you go to be stale and nothing happens there. So when I look at, there's so many women in this room that I'm inspired by. When I look at women like Lika Oputa, when I look at women like Busola Bello, Sosa, Ezawai, Fumbi, women that just take up space. Ifoma, such a formidable director, Toyosi Phillips, Eku, like, are you kidding me? Like, you know, Mrs. Nimi at Kinkube, like, there's so many women that have showed up and gone into uncomfortable positions, and that's why they are where they are today. I don't know any woman who has just been comfortable and chilling and then just got where they want to be. So it is in the place of that uncomfortability that you find yourself, that you know how strong you are, that you find your voice. That's how you find your voice. How do you know? You were scared of public speaking. Now I see you on panels everywhere on the biggest platform in the world because you put yourself in an uncomfortable position.
True that.
So, yeah.
Okay. So I don't know how much time we have left, but
I think we're almost wrapping up.
Okay, cool. So final question I would say to all three of you, and I'll start with Winnie, would be, what are you trying to say to the character that you played, that if you could, if there was more time, because obviously this is a short, if there was more time, what would you say to that character? What would you say to her in that moment? In the moment of like her experiencing everything that she's experienced?
I would tell her God knows best. Really, I would tell her God knows best. I would tell her to feel whatever she's feeling, and that is okay. I would tell her to feel the fear and do it anyway. I would tell her to continue to persevere and keep moving. Yeah. And she's doing well.
She's doing well, exactly. And to Kaliné, like, I just wanted to know, like, I know that you've spoken about, like, music supervising, especially in, like, Nigeria, and that not necessarily being a thing as such yet. What are you hoping for?
There's a long way to go, but composers are finally, like, being recognized. That's what I love to see the most. We are taking up more space. There's, bigger budgets. People are starting to understand the importance of customized scoring. So I'm looking for, I guess, more female composers, and to see more people do that.
And that's amazing, actually, and I will definitely be calling you. And to Nicole, like, you're writing, now you're directing. You told us that tennis lessons is coming. You just did Elisab, like, how many months ago? I just wanted to know, like, as you're going back or as you go home and as you tour the world, like, what are you trying to say with your stories? What imprint are you trying to leave with your stories on people that you want them to know, okay, this is the Nicole experience when they watch your film?
Wow. I'm speechless.
You said I should come and ask you questions.
A long time ago, I'm not going to go into the story, but a long time ago, like, I didn't get credit for something that I worked on, and I really wanted the credit. And I felt like I worked on it, so I deserved the credit. And I felt God tell me, is it for you or is it for me? And so I feel like ultimately with creativity, it's about the creator, right? So it's about the message that we're given. So with this story, it's about grief, it's about healing, it's about surrender and acceptance. And so maybe the next story is about, independence, and the next story is about, fighting imposter syndrome. I don't know what the themes that will come to me are, but I hope that the message God gives me is translated. That's all that I hope for.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much. It was an amazing film, amazing session. A round of applause for them, please.